Welcome to the game of Car Wars. The battle is about to begin. Are you ready?
Let us begin with an introduction. This game consists of 2 to 4 racers who aim to gain the most number of passengers by the time the cars reach the finishing line. In this game, each warrior is granted with 4 cars: Car 1, Car 2, Car 3 and Car 4. There are 4 decks of cards on the board: IPO, Expressway, Merger and Takeover, and Final Lap. Along with the cars, each racer will be given a numbered bag to put in their passengers. Each passenger is represented by a heart. To determine who starts first, each racer rolls the dice, and the racer with the highest number begins first. The game begins in a clockwise direction. Each racer rolls the dice once. In order for a racer to launch his car into the parking zone, his dice has to be 6. After rolling a 6, the racer is allowed to roll another time. In an event where he gets another 6, he is allowed to move the car 6 steps or launch another car. However, if the racer rolls 6 for the 3rd consecutive time, no further action can be taken and the game continues with the next racer. As the racer moves 6 steps, he settles onto his colored tile. Whenever a racer stops at his colored tile, he is required to answer a question on the IPO deck. The question is read out by another player in the game without showing the answer that is shown on the bottom of the card. Whenever a racer answers the question correctly, he is rewarded with the number of passengers shown on the card. There are 3 levels of difficulty of initial passenger offering. The level of difficulty is reflected on the number of passengers that is indicated on the card. The harder the question on the card, the greater the number of passengers the racer earns. However, if he fails to answer correctly, no further action is required. In the event that a racer lands on any expressway tile on the board, the player is required to answer a question from the expressway deck. If the question is answered correctly, he is then able to utilize the expressway. If the racer fails to answer correctly, he will forfeit the chance to use the expressway and instead play by the normal route. Merger and takeover questions are answered in 3 scenarios. The first scenario is when a racer's car catches up to another of his own car. If the racer successfully answers the merger and takeover question, the 2 cars merge and travel the rest of the board game together. Any future earnings of passengers will be multiplied by the number of cars merged. If answered wrongly, no merger exists and each car moves individually. The second scenario is when the racer catches up with an opponent's car. If the merger and takeover question is answered correctly, the opponent's car will return to its original position off the board, and all the passengers of that particular car will be transferred to the racer who has successfully taken over the position on the board. If the question is answered incorrectly, no further action is required. There will be no need to return the car back to its original position, no passengers are transferred, and both cars occupy the same position on the board. If a racer's merged cars are successfully taken over by an opponent, all the passengers gained earlier for the both cars will be transferred to the opponent. The cars will be returned back to its original position and will no longer be merged. Each of the racer's cars is allowed to travel a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 2 rounds. When the car arrives at the 4th expressway before their final lap, the racer can make a choice of travelling a second round on the board or enter into his final lap. If the racer chooses to take the final lap, the racer has to answer a final lap question. If the player rolls the dice and gets a 5, the car will have to make the following steps. In this case, he would have to answer a final lap question. If the racer answers correctly, the car would maintain its position on the final lap. If he answers it wrongly, the racer will lose his passengers as indicated on the card. In order for the racer to reach the finishing line, the racer will have to move his car by the exact number of tiles. However, if the number on the dice exceeds the number of moves required to reach the finishing line, the car will move backwards by the number of moves in excess. The game ends when all 4 racers have all 4 cars pass the finishing line. When a racer passes any car into a finishing line, 10 passengers are awarded. The racer who enters all 4 cars into the finishing line first is rewarded with 30 additional passengers. The second racer to do so is awarded with 20, while the third is awarded with 10. The last racer to accomplish this is awarded no additional passengers. The racer with the greatest number of passengers at the end of the game wins. Get your car wash today at any retail outlet or call the hotline 1-800-112-1176. Petrol and driver's license sold separately.